I refused to co-sign my friend's $85,000 business loan. He told everyone I ruined his dream. A year later, the bank called me instead of him. Ethan and I had been friends since freshman year of college. We weren't business partners, but we'd always talked about starting something together someday. After graduation, I became an accountant while he bounced between different startup ideas. Every few months, he'd call with another can't-miss opportunity that was supposedly going to change his life. Most of those ideas never made it past the planning stage, but I always listened because he was my friend. Then one evening, he showed up at my apartment carrying a binder full of financial projections for a custom furniture company and asked me to co-sign an $85,000 business loan. I spent the entire weekend reading every page of the paperwork. The numbers didn't add up. The bank wanted a co-signer because Ethan had very little savings, inconsistent income, and a credit history that made them unwilling to approve the loan on his own. When I politely told him I couldn't do it, he nodded and said he understood. At least that's what he said to me. Behind my back, the story was completely different. He started telling mutual friends I'd abandoned him when he finally needed real support. According to Ethan, I had the income to qualify, but cared more about protecting my bank account than helping someone I'd called my best friend for over 10 years. People I'd known since college began asking why I didn't believe in him. One friend even said, if you trust him enough to call him your brother, why wouldn't you trust his business? After hearing the same criticism from enough people, I honestly started wondering whether I'd been too cautious. Turning him down felt awful, even though every instinct told me I'd made the responsible decision. About 10 months later, I learned Ethan had convinced another friend, Chris, to co-sign the exact same loan. The business opened. At first, everything looked like a success. Photos of custom furniture filled social media. Customers left glowing reviews. Ethan posted about hiring employees, renting a larger workshop, and landing contracts with local businesses. For a while, I genuinely thought maybe everyone else had been right, and I'd been the only one who failed to believe in him. Then almost overnight, the updates stopped. The business page went quiet. The workshop closed. A few weeks later, I ran into Chris at a grocery store. He looked exhausted. I barely recognized him. When I asked how the business was doing, he laughed in a way that sounded more defeated than amused. It isn't. That's when he explained everything. The company had quietly shut down. Months earlier, after several large orders fell through, Ethan had moved to another state, looking for work, without telling most of the people involved. The loan, however, didn't disappear with the business. Because Chris had co-signed it, the bank considered him just as responsible for every missed payment. Collection notices started arriving at his house. His credit score dropped dramatically after several late payments. He'd been trying to refinance his mortgage at exactly the same time, but the outstanding business debt made him ineligible. A decision he'd made to help a friend was now affecting every financial plan he'd made for his own family. About a month later, Ethan finally called me, not to apologize, not to ask how I was doing. He wanted advice. He admitted the bank was trying to locate him because Chris had stopped making payments too. Then he quietly said something I'll never forget. You were lucky you said no. I answered almost immediately. No, I wasn't lucky. I just read what I was signing. There was a long silence. Then Ethan admitted he'd never expected the business to fail. He honestly believed everything would work out because he was passionate about the idea. He assumed friendship meant someone should be willing to take that risk beside him. Unfortunately, banks don't measure intentions. They measure signatures. About 6 months later, Chris and I met for coffee. He wasn't angry with me. Instead, he said watching me refuse the loan had actually taught him the lesson he wished he'd learned sooner. Supporting someone's dream is generous. Guaranteeing their debt is something completely different. Looking back, I realized saying no didn't end a friendship. His reaction to that answer did. Real friends might be disappointed, but they shouldn't. Expect your financial future to become collateral for their ambitions. Sometimes the hardest decision feels selfish in the moment, until time proves it was the only responsible one. If your closest friend asked you to co-sign an $85,000 business loan, would you do it, yes or no?